Hey y'all, I'm Sunny Shell, and tonight I'll be speaking with Natalia Reagan, actor, comedian, and scientist. So sit back, buckle up, and let's get to the sunny spot on Skeptic Haven.
Lay great stress on. It wasn't enough, he said, to enshrine some rights in a constitution or a Bill of Rights. The people had to be educated, and they had to practice their skepticism and their education. Otherwise, we don't run the government. The government runs us.
Hey everyone, we're so glad you could join us tonight, and I'm so happy to welcome Natalia Reagan. How are you doing tonight?
I'm great. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I feel like a little starstruck because you've done so much. I watched your video about everything that you've done this past year, and I
Oh
was
God.
like, wow. I woke up, went to sleep, and had a couple times where I walked and chewed gum at the same time. So, you
Wow.
know,
Hey. Honestly, I feel like last year was so hard for so many that I had to kind of write it all down because I can be like everyone, our own worst critic. So, but yeah, I
yep.
still doesn't feel like enough, right? It's
I
wild.
understand. Believe me. So, I want everyone to know that you are an anthropologist, primatologist, actor, producer, writer, host, and comedian. And I am starstruck because you have been a comedy writer and correspondent on Neil deGrasse Tyson's StarTalk. And I absolutely love Neil deGrasse Tyson. And so, first of all, before we get into it, tell me about him.
Oh,
How is it working with him?
he's great. It's so funny. I met him, and first of all, he's a big fan of Starry Night, so he would love your background. Years ago, I played Lady Star Talk. I created a character to go to Comic-Con, and I had a Starry Night fanny pack to correspond with him. But he's great. I met him at a party years ago because I wanted to kind of infiltrate and become a comedy writer for him. And he's, just what you'd expect. What you see is kind of what you get. He's larger than life. He's, endlessly curious. He always has questions. It's funny because sometimes, he would want to tweet about primates and he would run it past me, and be like, hey, I just want to make sure I got this right. And I'd be like, no, let's read to. But like, that's good is, he was asking because he has, I think, tweeted things incorrectly. And of course,
hmm
um, eh, biology, oh God, it was very funny. He tweeted, I think, if there was a species for which sex was painful, it would have long since gone extinct. And of course, all the biologists were like, bed bugs, cats, humans. I mean, let's talk endometriosis. But like, again, we all try to do our best. So he's good at going, okay, I get it. But he's fun. He's a rollicking good time.
Yeah, he seems like it. He seems like he would be funny and interesting and all those really cool things. So I'm sorry, I had to bring that in.
No. And he
Because
loves, if you ever see him, he actually really does enjoy being recognized. He's not one of those celebrities that's like, leave me, he does hold court. Like he enjoys it. And I remember riding the subway with him a couple times, and people kind of just sort of looking him up and down, being like, wait a minute. And he, I think he got tickled by that.
that's awesome. That's awesome. So I was looking at all of your cool stuff and watching your videos, like the one that you do with your friend talking shit with
Dr.
uh,
Todd and Natalia.
Dr. Todd. That's it. How much fun is that? I mean, it seems like you just have a lot of fun, and yet you're educating people.
That's the goal. That's what we want, and talking shit with Dr. Todd and Natalia was born out of a show called $10 million Bigfoot Bounty. I had created some science comedy videos that got some traction, and then an executive producer was looking to cast a Bigfoot show. Todd Disotell, who is a biological anthropologist that was at NYU for many years now, he's at UMass Amherst, running a lab up there. But we were cast as the co-host. It was Dean Cain of 1990 Superman. Dean Cain. He was the main host, and we did great science on the show. We had a mobile DNA lab. I was the field primatologist. Todd took care of the literal SHIT show. It was a shit show because it was a reality show competition where it was 9 teams of 2 that had to bring us DNA and photographic evidence of Bigfoot, which, it could have been $100 million bounty, right? But and
hmm
the thing is, yeah, like photographic doesn't even matter. Like we just need the gold standard, which is DNA. But every episode we had an elimination round, which was perfectly tiled because literally they just brought in lots of turds. So we knew the show wasn't going to give us or give the science probably the fair shake that we thought it deserved, because we had camera traps, we had we had people collecting biting and blood-sucking insects like leeches and mosquitoes and carrion flies to dissect their last blood meal so we could determine what they had last eaten, which is a really cool way to do an ecological survey without actually seeing, the animals. And so we did. I decided, can we do talking shit with Dr. Todd and Natalia? And the production company was like, the network were like, that's fine. We're not going to fund it. That's on you. But it's like, okay. And so Todd and I basically, funded it ourselves, and I would shoot it in the lab with him. And thanks to the visual anthropology department, Cheryl Ferjanik was very helpful, lending us, different lights and things of that sort. But it was fun. It was a really good time. And we were trying to get more funding to turn it into more of a, have an actual budget, because we just basically on a shoestring in the lab or in Washington Square Park, but it kind of fizzled out just because, after a while it was too much to maintain.
Yeah, I understand, but it was fun while it lasted.
Yes.
Yeah. So the other thing I wanted to talk to you about, which I think was really cool, you did a whole video series on boobs, butts and balls. What
Guilty.
started that?
That's a great question. So I went to school. I studied spider monkeys. I actually just dropped off flyers at my alma mater and ran into my graduate advisor not even 30 minutes ago. So, I had a great time doing that. But when I was wrapping up grad school, I started pitching and developing science comedy TV shows. And a lot of production companies were amused, but also baffled. Like, where is that going to live? Where can we throw that on television? And I kind of got laughed out of a few rooms. And so, and before I was a scientist, I was an actor, and I did comedy then. So I always found the humor in what I did. And I have an unfair advantage studying monkeys. But I started coming up with my own shows, and, when I got heard no so many times, my friend was like, why don't you just make your own content? And this is 2010, beginning of 2011, when we didn't have phones that could just whip something up in 30 minutes. So I had to do like a little skeleton crew shoot in my garage in Burbank, which I still have that apartment. We shot the story of boobs, the breast tale ever told, because it was one of those come for the boobs, stay for the science, rope them in with something salacious, but actually teach them about the evolution of bipedalism and Miocene apes, and how a lot of our morphology is shaped by, our locomotion, because it's not just boobs. Then we went on to butts. But the way that happened was I released that video, and I was terrified to release it because I didn't want to lose whatever little street cred I had in the anthropology world for making a boobs video, because it can be kind of a little upper crust and a little, not elitist, but just a little like more conservative. They loved it, but it didn't go viral. I had like 200 views. And then I got a call right after graduation from the Today Show, because they were going to do a segment on boobs, and they Googled anthropologist and boobs and found me. It was apparently slow week. And they flew me out there, and as the plane was landing, the Casey Anthony verdict came out. Like, I was watching on the JetBlue, the TV, and I was like, well, this is getting pushed. And it got pushed 2 weeks, and they just put me up in New York for like,
wow.
Yeah, I couch surfed for a couple days, and I finally called them, and I was like, I can't couch. I have nowhere else to couch surf. They're like, we'll just put you up in a hotel. And I was like, this is crazy. And so they did, and I did the show. And a couple of days later, Stephen Colbert was like, I saw you did a thing on boobs. What about butts? And then he was like, what about butt week? And so I did a rebuttal that night. Like, it was like a 24-hour turnaround where I made a video about butts. And then that snowballed quite literally into butt week number 2 with Liberty and Just Ask for All, talking about how bipedalism, again, led to the enhanced human keister, because non-human primates don't have a booty like ours. So it was a fun way to kind of talk about the science without being, having a little something sassy, so. And also I talked about colonoscopies and prostate exam, all the butt stuff,
Yep. I absolutely loved it. I was watching it in the other room. I was in the living room. My husband was in the next room, and I was watching the Stephen Colbert one, And then I was watching, the one that you did where you were like pretending to be sad because you had a butt and it was a
Oh,
big butt. And, but eventually, Sir Mix-a-Lot made you feel at home and like, okay, I have a place now. And my husband comes in like, what are you listening to? This is what I'm preparing for a show. This is very serious.
right. This is
Yeah.
very serious content. That was ridiculous. Oh, I forgot about that. That was that was actually funny enough. I did that right. I think before I went to the Today Show. And then the butt thing happened. Then like the Stephen Colbert thing happened. I was like, well, now I really got to get rearing and ready to go. Got to get behind this. And then Allie Ward, funny enough, if you're familiar with ologies, she is a friend of mine. We've known each other for years. And when she started ologies, she was like, I want to have you on as a primatologist. But she messaged me on Instagram, which I had no idea you could get messages back then. So I missed it. And we finally decided, let's do a thing on butts. And so I did a gluteology, talking all butt stuff, which of course, my poor mom, who's somewhere around here, is like, where did I go wrong? And then balls, because I did a PSA about testicular cancer, because, why not?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, these are important things. They're fun to talk about and they're fun to play with, but they're also important things and we need to take care of them.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. And now that I'm an older lady, when I first did the story of boobs, I did play with your boobs as well, but it was before I needed, I was probably 34 when I did it, now I'm 44. So, now I get mammograms, and I did a video about mammograms. I did one, the first time I did one, which was actually in 2021. It was right in the heart of COVID. And I was living in New York at the time. And my friend's mom actually did my ultrasound of my boobs, which was the cutest thing because she was so sweet. She's doing the ultrasound of my titties, and she's like, "You have very cute boobs, very cute boobs." She's like, "You probably don't want me to tell you that. You probably want someone else to tell you that." But it was. I appreciate it. Thank you, Sheila. I'll never forget.
That's all. I would take that and like hold on to it. And when I'm having a bad day and I don't feel very pretty, I'd be like, I have very cute tatas.
Yes,
that's what I would want.
Your
Like, hold
flap
on to
doodles, chef's kiss.
Okay, so I'm sorry.
I was gonna say, where are you based?
Well, so our show we're kind of all over the place. I am in North Carolina. I am unfortunately in the ass crack of Trump land.
Oh man.
But that's okay because I have this and I'm able to speak with people who have, brains. And I really enjoy speaking to people with brains. So,
good. Oh man.
Yep.
Well, thanks for being a shining light of blue in a red,
Yes.
state. Yes.
Yeah.
I love
But
North
that's
Carolina,
okay.
by the way. Yeah.
It's a very beautiful state. We're lucky because you have mountains on one side and ocean. You get it all.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
Yeah. So if anyone in our chat would like to ask questions, remember, just ask them and I'll ask them to our guest and you could be a part of this show in that way. So be sure and ask. And really quickly before we go on, I do have a quick announcement. This Saturday at 3:30 Central on Women Atheist Unload, we will be having our first ever call-in show for that one. And it will be hosted by Alma and Mary Byler. Mary, our wonderful Mary, whom I love, was recently featured on Soft White Underbelly, and it has almost 1 million views. So you've got to check it out if you have not seen it. Check it out. The topic will be the war on women. So once again, that's Women Atheist Unload this Saturday, 3:30 Central. Don't miss it. All right, back to our show.
That sounds amazing.
Yes, absolutely. Mary is amazing, and I love. She's a former. The name's right out of my head. Amish. That's the word, Amish.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Yeah. And so you've got to check out her Soft White Underbelly interview. It was like amazing, absolutely amazing.
Holy crap! That's got to be a story.
Absolutely. So we have our first question. When did Natalia first discover interest in anthropology and primatology? Great question, Wes.
Yeah. That's awesome. Thank you. Well, honestly, this is kind of a funny side note. When I was growing up, I used to have recurring King Kong nightmares. In fact, I still get them. And my very first lucid dream was shrinking King Kong down to the size of an orangutan. I was in the dream. I was in the house from Silver Spoons. That's how old I
Uh-huh.
am. I'm dating myself, but
I am too.
and I could hear the footsteps. Yeah, and then I opened the door and there was an orangutan there and it hugged me, and that's when I no longer was afraid and more loved primates. But it wasn't until I took I wanted to do zoology, but my math and science skills waned in junior high and high school. I didn't think I could hack it. So I went to school for theater and I took one anthropology class my freshman year. It was a cultural class, but it still really struck me. And I loved it. And then I dropped out for a myriad of reasons and was living a hippie actor lifestyle in Venice Beach. Went back to school at Santa Monica College. That's why I'm a huge fan of community college. I don't like it when people crap on community college because
Mhm.
there was a professor named Professor Denman who taught Introduction to Biological Anthropology, and it changed my world and it made me fall in love. It was literally the story of how the hell did we get here starting 4.5 billion years ago. And I just love that. I love the story. And I love how the story that I learned in 2000, I took it fall 2001. So 9/11 happened during this class while I was teaching it while I was taking it. And I don't know, it really kind of reshaped my idea of everything. And I thought this was the best story in the whole entire world. And the fact that it's changed even so much since I've taken that class is deeply fascinating. But I didn't know what to do with it. And it wasn't until I got in a really bad accident at 25. I got hit by a truck, my own truck. Weird story, on the shoulder of the freeway. I know. I ran into somebody. They pulled over on the shoulder. I pulled over behind them. I asked if we could get off the freeway. They didn't speak English. They happened to be in town from Japan on business. And while I was standing between my pickup truck and their car, a woman came up on the shoulder going about 65 miles per hour, hit my truck. My truck hit me, pinned me. So I broke my femur, got pinned and crushed all my ligaments and tendons. And then her car spun out, my truck did, and I got tossed onto the off ramp and landed on my head, which explains a lot, but I'm good now. But I had to learn how to walk again, which, by the way,
Oh my God.
that also made me think about boobs and butts, like having to learn how to walk and, again, the whole bipedalism and how it sort of really shaped who we are as humans. But long story short, that's how it happened. It was,
Wow, that's amazing. I went from going like, oh my gosh, to laughing and then oh my gosh, what a story. That's amazing. I have always had this fear of being, crushed between two cars like that. So
yeah,
your fear
you're
of
smart.
yeah, I mean, okay, I've got to go back to because you had said that you had a big fear, a really big fear of King Kong, right?
Mhm.
But you also have like the biggest King Kong collection.
Collection. Yeah. So that was when I was a little girl, and then when I got older, that became my thing because I there was a gorilla, and that's how I kind of got into anthropology, but primatology specifically. There was a gorilla at the LA Zoo named Caesar, and he was born in 1977, so I'm 79. He's a couple years older than me, and he was alone at the LA Zoo. He was kept alone because he was the first gorilla delivered by cesarean section, hence the name Caesar. And he didn't want to copulate with any. He didn't want to get freaky deaky with any of the female gorillas because I think he probably preferred the company of humans because that's what he was pretty much raised by.
Mhm.
And he hung by himself, and I would just go visit him at the zoo and like just stare lovingly at him. And he was shipped off to a Hotlanta while they were redoing the enclosure. And while he was there, he finally was getting amorous with a female, and then he died of intestinal issues, blockage or something of that sort. And I was heartbroken. And that was kind of like what really solidified not only primatology, but gorillas. And that's actually what I wanted to study in school. I did my undergrad. I don't know if I have it here. No, I never printed it up. I have my undergrad honors thesis is on a subspecies of gorilla called Grauer's gorillas, which are only found in Democratic Republic of Congo. And they're closely related to they're eastern gorillas. So there's the mountain gorillas, and there's these Grauer gorillas, and they're heavily affected by the tech booms that we've had. I'm sure there's been a lot of videos now about the coltan and the cobalt mining in
Mhm.
Africa. Coltan is in our phones. It is a heat resistant mineral that is in all our electronics, and everything's built to break or become obsolete in a year. And that drives the need for coltan. And 80% of the world's coltan is in Africa, and 80% of Africa's coltan is in Democratic Republic of Congo. So when the boom happened in like the late 90s and then it busted, first of all, there was deforestation, which ruined their habitat. Then they would turn to bush meat hunting or selling body parts of gorillas to tourists. So, you know, and I'm a big believer that and that's why I wanted to do gorilla conservation or any type of conservation, because I feel like you can't study them if they're gone. But I'm a very big believer that people, you know, conservation has to be people first, because if people's needs are not met in a region, they might care about the wildlife, but they're not going to prioritize it. And
Right.
that's like anybody, right? Like, you know, if you didn't know if you could feed your family, you're not going to be like, well, I'm not going to save the frogs. Like, you know,
Yeah, exactly.
so,
Well, it's interesting because now I have two things. One is the picture of you with Dr. Jane Goodall. That
aw,
must have been like amazing. Like,
yes,
oh, I saw that. I was like, wow, I thought that was crazy. I can't believe it. But it makes sense because that was your interest. So that's
yeah.
really cool. Yeah.
She's her and a man named Robert Sapolsky are the two reasons in terms of like reading and research that made me want to become a primatologist. Robert Sapolsky wrote a book called A Primate's Memoir, which if anyone is watching, or, you know, definitely check out this book. It's about his research with baboons, and it's a love story to primatology work, honestly. And he's a neuroscientist out of Stanford. He's gotten a little heat lately because he's questioned whether or not we have free will, which I haven't gone into too deeply, but he's done a lot of other like great work talking about cooperation. And he studied basically a group of baboons and saw a huge cultural change in this one particular group, which I use as an example anytime I talk about like how plastic we are as a species. You know, we're able to change in one generation, really, you know, and humans are capable of that. And I think that's what gives me hope when I see things kind of going south. I'm like, you know, things can turn around. It's just sometimes it takes a big shift, you know.
Right. Kind of a catalyst, some event or something that kind of triggers people to allow the change. Change is hard for people a lot of
It
times,
is. Yeah.
especially fast change, and we're able to do that, but it's painful
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah. It means a lot of, you know, rethinking of what you think is normal and what is right.
Mhm.
And, you know, I think we all have had to face things that we thought were good and right. And then like, oh, wait a minute, hold on. Maybe I was not looking at this with with somebody else's perspective, or put myself in somebody else's shoes. So,
Right. Yep.
yeah. But
Well, the
Jane is
second thing.
amazing.
Oh,
I'm
go
sorry.
ahead. Sorry.
Oh, no, no. I was just gonna say I mean, I've met her 3 times now, and,
Ah,
one little thing I think you would appreciate about Jane is the first time I met her, she was exhausted. She just, you know, she did a keynote that day at a conference. I was presenting at the same conference, but to a much smaller room. She, you know, gave the keynote address that morning, and it was amazing. But then I met her a year later, and we were taking a photo together, and she's told me, she goes, "You know, it's better if we look at each other. That way you captured the connection." And that's why the last 2 photos that I've taken with her, we're looking at each other. And I immediately break into like a laugh cry where I'm staring at her and I'm like laughing because I can't believe it's, but I'm also crying. So, anyways, that's a little tidbit of, and I think when I take pictures of people, I always tell them, look at each other. I want to see a moment, you know?
that's awesome. That is absolutely awesome. Awesome. That's so great. The second thing that what you were talking about made me think about is Africa is like the quintessential place that everybody tries to steal from, in
Yeah.
essence. You know, if there's something, it's going to be in Africa, and um, you know, people are going to exploit it and harm the environment, harm the indigenous peoples, and it's just so sad. When you were saying, I'm like, oh my gosh, not Africa, poor Africa. They're just
I,
all the time hurt.
yeah. And I mean, just even the idea of like, looking at colonialism across the globe.
Hmm.
And that's why, you know, there's people that want to really hold, and this is where it's uncomfortable. I just had the conversation with the chair of my department, who was one of my professors for years. And we were just talking about even like the shift in the biological anthro meetings about repatriation and how to treat
Hmm.
indigenous human remains, that it's such an easy thing to do right, and it's such an obvious thing to take care and to like, you know, give back remains and to think, you know, but it's just the fact that there's pushback, and it's usually, I don't want to you know, be, it's older white males that are like, I don't like this is the way it's always been done. But the way it's
Absolutely.
always yeah, and my challenge to the way it's always been done is one of the coolest things I learned in a cultural anthro seminar was about tradition is never old, it's always new, because you have to continue to choose tradition. You have to continue to choose doing it the way it's always been done. At any point, you could say, I choose not to do the way it's always been done. So it might seem old, but it's as new as the last time somebody chose to do it, you know? So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and with the case of Africa, I do see a lot of really great, because I saw someone about conservation projects in Africa. Um, there was the one I was supposed to go to DRC, and I graduated from undergrad in 2008, and I was, you know, hell bent on going to it's called Gorilla CD was the name of the organization, and they were teaching folks how to make compost burning briquettes, because what was a big problem was illegal charcoal harvesting, going into the forest, cutting down the forest, because they had to feed their family, they had to cook, you know what I mean? It's again, needs that need to be met. And so they were trying to build briquettes, and teach folks how to make these briquettes, which would eliminate the need to go and deforest. But the area got really dangerous in the fall of 2008, and I was, you know, told that, yeah, we can't, you're going to stand out too much. We can't have you come on out here. You're going to be a liability. We're going to have to, you know, air vac you out, and that's going to cost, you know, an arm and a leg. So, sorry, no. And I was devastated, but at the same time, I got it, you know. But there has been a lot of people first conservation efforts in Africa, especially in Eastern Africa. A lot of the rangers now have been reformed poachers. So people that had, you know, used to be involved in poaching, many of them have been, you know, wanted to do something good and give back, and there was more money. Because when you incentivize either reforesting or even, you know, protecting one's wildlife, and pay them more than they could get, you know, from poaching, you know, that will change the way people, you know, look at that endeavor.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So, talking about the conservation attempts, Kathy Human has asked, what conservation attempts have they made for the gorillas there?
Yeah, so that one of them was that the compost burning briquettes.
Mm-hmm.
I know that they're just trying to make sure that they're protected as best as possible. Although, like I mentioned, there was a dude. Ooh, he was not a good dude. His name was General Nakunda. He was a Congolese Tutsi, who was basically at this particular time, and like in the 2010s, leading guerrilla treks, but, you know, illegally, like he wasn't part of a organization. And so trying to kind of keep someone like him out of operation. But they've had again a lot of efforts to use guerrilla tourism, but do it in a way that's sustainable and ethically, for instance, not risk zoonotic diseases, because that's one of the things that can happen is when you go meet the mountain gorillas. I had a friend that just did Western lowland gorillas in, where were they? Oh my gosh, I can't remember which country. Gabon, I think they were in Gabon. But they make sure that you don't even have a hint of a cold. They want you to be as healthy as you can be, because if you go out there, you could get them sick. So that's a way to bring in money. I know that they just have a lot of efforts where the locals are absolutely involved and are running them. There's a book, Dr. Gladys, if you could look her up, she just came out with a book about her life, basically treating the mountain gorillas and taking care of them. And so there's just been a lot of, you know, work to conserve. But DRC, like I said, Grauer's gorillas are in a really tight bind, because they're in one of the more dangerous parts of the world, where, you know, like at least with the mountain gorillas, you've got Uganda, Rwanda, DRC come together, Virunga National Park. And you have a little bit more protection there. And there's a man named Emmanuel de Merode, who's he's actually, oh my goodness, forgive me, I think he's Belgian. I should know this. He's like royalty. He's actually like he's you know, he's not a prince, but maybe he is a prince. I mean, he's something. He's royalty, and he's actually the head ranger there. But he's been kidnapped before, and thank goodness survived.
Wow.
But yeah, so they're constantly working on different projects. But I'm not 100% sure what exactly is going on now. And one of the other things about conservation is people doing studies down there. Behavioral studies kind of act as conservation only because when you have people on the ground, those are eyes on the ground, and people are less likely to do things to harm the animals, or
Mhm.
do something illegal. So that is the upside to having behavioral studies ongoing.
So Kat also has a follow-up question,
Mhm.
and you may not know this, but what type of laws do they have against poaching?
I do know it's illegal. I don't know what exactly, the recourse is. So that's a great question. I can look more into it and follow up if you want.
Yeah, that's
I'm happy
a
to
great
do
question.
that. Yeah, no, it is. I know that my dad has told me stories because he spent some time in Africa of folks that would take it into their own hands and kill poachers, if they caught them on their land. Because and this is more, I think, in Zimbabwe, so it's more savannas and things of that sort. But yeah, it's in 2007, was it 2008? It was, I think, 2008. This was tragic. There's a National Geographic with the cover of it. It broke me when I saw this. It was, I think they killed 4 mountain gorillas, possibly a few more, and they just killed them and left them as if just delivering a message, which, they did not take them to eat. They did not take them to, you know what I mean? It was just sending a message. And it was one of the most disgusting things I've ever seen. And it just broke my heart. And that is the kind of stuff that, they have to constantly combat. And, and a lot of it's education, starting young and giving them viable options to work in conservation.
That's awesome. Anytime you can start
Yeah.
teaching kids the right way to to help the
Yeah.
world. Here's another question. Now, this goes back to your spider monkey history.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about your graduate work and essay on spider monkeys, and what did you do when you caught them?
First of all, I didn't catch them. Yeah, so I actually worked in Central America. I worked in Panama. I did primate field school, which is actually a thing where you go and learn how to chase monkeys and put together a research project. I did that in Costa Rica in winter 2008, 2009, and then I went to graduate school. And my grad advisor, I just saw, a little bit ago, she studied spider monkeys on BCI, which is Barro, Colorado Island in the middle of the Panama Canal. When they created the Panama Canal in the early 1900s, they flooded they created this Lake Gatun, and basically BCI is a mountain, but now an island because, of this lake. And so I actually did my preliminary field work there to get to know spider monkeys, and they're incredibly fast. They're very wily. I was in the best shape of my life. I fell uphill, I fell downhill, I fell in love. I called myself the Jack Tripper of primatology because of my accident. I'm missing a muscle responsible for balance in my leg, so I did fall a lot. But
Oh, wow.
I actually so I had to pivot from mountain gorillas, or not mountain, but Growers gorillas. Because in 2008 I was going to go there, and then I had taken a class with Dr. Christina Campbell from Cal State Northridge, and she'd worked with spider monkeys. I said, and she was like, "I'd love to work with you," and I was like, "I'd love to work with you, but I want to work in conservation." And she goes, "You're just in luck. I got reached out to by a woman who is starting an organization called the Azuero Earth Project. It's now called I think it's Pro Eco Azuero." But they got a grant and they wanted somebody to do a survey of this critically endangered subspecies of spider monkey on the Pacific coast of Panama, that had been, the area has been heavily deforested. I mean, like, every time I told people I was going to go to the Azuero Peninsula to look for spider monkeys that knew about Panama, they're like, "What are you talking about? There cannot be monkeys there. There's no forest." In this one particular region. And I was like, "No, apparently there are." And so I went out there, and I remember when I did my preliminary research in Azuero on this peninsula, we couldn't find them. I did a video into that, like, beginning of 2010, of like seeing howler monkeys, capuchin monkeys, more howlers, no spiders. And I was freaking out because I was like, "How the hell am I going to come down here and do a survey and count these?" Because my whole job was to literally count monkeys in trees, get as many distinguishing characteristics as possible, and then scram. But fortunately, I had the best guide in the world named Jairo Batista. I thought I spoke really great Spanish when I moved down there, and I was wrong. And he didn't speak any English, and so we would fight all the time and he would yell at me in Spanish. I'd yell at him, like, like by fight, we were bickering. We loved each other so much, and we're still close. And I love him. Like I just think the world of him. And, I used to joke, I don't know how he would find all the things that I would like, everything that was on my body would drop off. Cameras, like chapstick, water bottle, like he would find everything. I don't know, like what he's got, like a mental GPS. But essentially I created all my data of all these, and it was a nightmare too, because by the way, I had a field partner who was great, Danielle, Dan. He's French Canadian, so it's Danielle. He, we, I, we had we used a GPS, and I got a hard drive. How did this work? Something failed, and we lost our data for like the first 3 weeks. And so we had to
Oh no.
recreate the same thing to find this. Yeah, it was like, because this is 2010. So it was just, and then we had no internet. We'd have to go to a McDonald's we'd spend like 8 hours in a McDonald's using the internet on our days off. But it was great. And we were able to create these maps to show that these spider monkeys were living in these little tiny forest fragments, like islands on a landscape. Because there was a very intense creek system. They're called quebradas, the creeks. So there was a Ria Aurea, and then all these little creeks that went off this river. And it was the reason why it had not been cut down is because it was so treacherous that the landowners would just leave this treacherous forest because it was so steep. And that's why I fell so much. But it was really cool. We found a bunch of, we found about 101 spider monkeys. And with the way we, created these maps and tried to make sure that we didn't double count. And if I saw connectivity, I would choose the lowest number and, this and that, and make sure that we weren't overestimating the population. But we could look at the connectivity or the lack thereof, and then use that data to inform landowners about where to best reforest. And they're actually doing that now. Funny enough, like there's actually an organization that's down there right now using red credit or carbon credits to incentivize the landowners by giving them money to reforest. And that's exactly how good conservation works, where everybody wins.
That's fantastic. Wow. That's so cool. It's funny because you were talking earlier about being in school and enjoying or supporting community colleges and having that instructor that just kind of sparked your interest.
Yeah.
And it took me right back to my own experience. Because it was almost exactly like that.
Really?
Yeah, it really was.
What did you study?
I went for psychology, which I do still. I have my degree, but I also got a degree in political science, and it was because my first semester at community college, I was a non-traditional student because I went after my first child was born, and I'll never forget. Her name was Barbara Walls. Hi, Barbara, if you're seeing this. She was not Ms. Walls. She was not Mrs. Walls. She was Barbara Walls, and you didn't call her anything else because that was patriarchy. And she explained what it was. Well, I had gotten married, a couple of years before, and I was like, wait a minute, what? And I get all, what are you talking about? I'm not anyone's property. What are you talking about? And but she sparked me, and I ended up taking every class that she had. And then when I transferred to the 4-year university, I took every class that I could get. Next thing you know, I have 2 degrees. I was able to get 2 degrees on that. So it was the same things you were speaking. It was just, and anyway, what you were talking about with conservation and all of that. It's so cool when education and inspiration can meet to really create change. I just think that's awesome.
Me too.
All of that to say that.
Yeah. And no, that's really great that you had that. And I love her take on that. Cause I think it's important to hear that when you're at any age, like, oh, I never thought about what does it mean to call someone Ms. or Mrs. versus just, this is my name, or I am a doctor, you know what I mean? Cause I know that I have a lot of colleagues. I'm not a doctor. I have a master's, but I have a lot of friends who have a doctorate, and they get called Mrs. or Ms. And they're like, do you correct the student? Do you,
Right.
it's that, but it's always good to have somebody inspire you. And I'm glad that you went on. Cause I mean, do you still keep in touch with her?
No, I don't. I actually keep in touch with several of my other professors, my 4-year university professors, but not with her. And I'm dying to know what happened with her. Because, yeah, she was really cool. Like when she didn't take her husband's name when they got married and they had kids, and they always said if it's if they have males, they will take his last name. If they have females, they'll take her last name, and they had boys. So
Holy moly. That is really okay. Because I've done multiple talks about bonobos, and I'm doing a show coming up next week called Survival of the Filthiest, where I end the show talking about bonobos. And I when I was doing the show last year, I had put it out to Facebook, which I knew this is a very not trick question, but a bit of fraught question. I was like, "Hey folks, what's your favorite? Hey anthros, what's your favorite example of a human matriarchy?" And I knew that I'd get a bunch of different answers. I got many that were like, "There's no such thing. There's never been one." This and then I got, there's the there's the Mozu, there's which is the same, and there's different the Iroquois and all these different. It was really interesting, but I don't know. I think it's a question that because even when we were talking about bonobos, and I got some pushback whether or not bonobos were matriarchal because they're not violent, and I was like, well, maybe power looks different when females have power. Maybe it doesn't have to be death. They still were violent, but actually that's how they discovered that bonobo females were dominant. Was researcher Amy Parrish kept noticing that there were universal basically injuries to males, at different locations, like different zoos, but they were not housed with other males. They were housed with females. They're like, how are they getting these? And it was like, finally, oh, they're done by the females.
yeah,
And that's how.
That's so crazy. Now bonobos, I can't remember if I'm correct on this or not, but as you were speaking about it being a matriarchal type of a, I almost said society. I don't know if that's the right term or not.
Yeah, that's fine.
But,
That works.
I remember hearing sometime that they're also very sexual, like they deal with conflict through sex.
Absolutely. You're right. Yeah. And that's why I do a whole bit about this. I do stand-up comedy, and I do a bit about bonobos being, they're called pan-peniscus. That's their scientific term, but they should be pan-promiscuous because that is how they deal with all conflict. Chimpanzees like to fight it out. Bonobos like to fork it out. And it's not just males and females. Females will do a thing called GG rubbing, where they rub their water closets together, primate scissoring, and then males will do penis fencing, which is just the scientific term for sword fights. And Billy Joel didn't they said we started the fire, but I'm pretty sure it was bonobos rubbing their tummy sticks together. But there's a lot of sexual activity, and I would get back when I was on dating apps, I'd get these messages from dudes saying like, "Hey, so you're a primatologist, do you know about bonobos?" Which is like, okay, how stupid do you think I am? But also I get what you're trying to say. But then I would have to inform them, if you want to be like bonobos, you should know that they are female dominant. The ladies run the show. They're like the entire cast of Golden Girls, except every last one of them is Blanche Devereaux. They're like these unapologetic, salacious sluts. Like that's what they are. But and it's also, this is one of my favorite. One of the primatologist dudes kind of fired back at me and was like, actually, there are dominant males in bonobos. So I think they're co-dominant. There are dominant males, but what determines whether he is dominant or not is the ranking of his mom. So it still comes down. Yeah. So if a high ranking female has a son, he will be higher ranking based on, so, and poor Amy Parrish, who, wow, I had a wonderful interview with her last year. She's amazing. She published these results in 1996, and a lot of people didn't like them. And by a lot of people, I mean men. And they pushed back. And I know. And they said it was not female dominance. Get this. It was male deference. The males were letting the ladies think they were in charge.
Of course. It's, that just goes to show the fragile male ego. It's like they can't even think about another species where the female, I swear.
Could you imagine if we're like the reason why these chimpanzee females get their butts kicked all the time is because they're just like wanting the males to think they're, and what a terrible strategy is that if the bonobos are getting beat up, I don't understand. So, and it's really interesting, even the females, because usually what determines the bonds within a group is who stays in the group. Like, for instance, baboons. Baboons are matrilocal, so the males disperse. A lot of species are matrilocal, so the males will disperse, the females will stay. So there's strong bonds there. Males will go to a new group, and they don't have, it's like going to a new town when you're 16 years old, right? You don't have childhood memories with Steve, Bob, and Alan, right? So with bonobos and chimps, they're both patrilocal. The males stay, the females disperse. So it would make sense that the males would have these tight bonds and they would be the one bossing people around. But what the females do when a young female joins a new group, I love this. She finds like the oldest, most dominant female in the group, gives her the first, or the best 2 weeks of her life, shows her, all the fireworks, and then she's in. Then she's good, right? That is how they kind of solidify their spot in a group. So, and they also control access to food. So males will oftentimes exchange le sex for le food. So,
Yes.
anyways, yeah.
We kind of do that a little bit, as humans. We get ticked off at our spouse or whatever. It's like, you can't have the stuff go fix my dinner. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, exactly. Buy me dinner first if you're going to be like that. No. Oh my gosh.
So we do have a question from Artemis Brain Sample. What other primates have shut-ins?
What do you mean by shut-in? Are you just saying like they just don't, like they just hang out? Are you talking about, wait, because I see no. What do you mean by shut-in?
Let's see.
Do you know what that means? Because I feel like that's a term that I don't.
And I'm not seeing him. I bet.
I know Artemis. How are you, Artie? Good to see you. Do you mean like, recluse? Are you just saying a recluse? Okay, yeah. Okay, so yeah, it's a good, yes. Okay. A hominin recluse. So yeah, there are a couple examples of, solitary species. And when I use air quotes, it's because by solitary, I mean, holy crap, it's pouring rain yet again. I'm sorry. I'm in California and it's like the atmospheric river will not freaking stop. Or is that a plane?
It's terrible out there.
Yeah.
All the flooding and landslides and everything.
I'm okay, but like I live right by the LA River, so it's fascinating to watch it go from like a trickle to like raging torrents. But orangutans, I call them deadbeat dads and single moms of the forest because they generally forage alone. And males are quite large, 300 plus pounds. Females are about 200 plus pounds ish. And females have their infant second longest to any primate on earth, because we all know 50-year-old men that live in their parents' basement. That's not directed at anybody, by the way. Just we all know that. I mean, look, I've even had stints staying at home as an older lady, so I get it. But the orangutan infants stay with their mom for 8 years. And can you imagine if there's low resource availability? So their forests are being heavily deforested, as every year, like orangutans are constantly struggling with the threat of extinction. So there's not a lot of food around. So why would you want to compete with a big male? And so they actually forage alone, and they spend most of their time solo. And but when you get them together in groups, like if you've ever seen any videos of orangutans at a zoo or a sanctuary, they love to play. They love to be all super gregarious and like, hang out with each other. So it's definitely, it seems to be environmentally driven. But we don't have the time machine necessarily to go back to see like when they did have abundant resources, how did that look, So they're a good example of somebody that's, or a primate that definitely kind of sticks by itself. There are some examples of like monogamous. They're not very many, but monogamous primates like gibbons, which are they used to be called lesser apes, which is kind of rude. They're just smaller apes. They're not great apes, but they're just a little step removed, and they form nuclear families. So they're monogamish because like they'll sneak extra pair copulations. Like, I'm going to go borrow a cup of sugar from Betty at the next tree over, give her the, best 30 seconds of her life, and then come back over, And the best way we know that now is because DNA doesn't lie, right? We can do paternity tests like, oog, you are the father, or whatever this is. But yeah, so those are, and then owl monkeys too have monogamous pairs. But yeah, and there's some other eyes can be somewhat reclusive. I'm trying to think of lorises and tarsiers too are not the most like gregarious of primates. But they're not, those are, well, tarsiers are the ones that look like they look like, they've got big old alien eyes. You know, their eyes are
Hmm.
actually bigger than their brain. They're in a weird
Wow.
liminal space where they're not strepsirrhines or lemurs and lorises, and they're not like they're technically anthropoids, but they're like not a monkey, not an ape. They're like a tarsier. It's kind of this weird gray area.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
I have got to put gonna go for it's up
Aw.
because he asked, he's like, I say he, I assume it's a he.
That's
I
Peter.
should say
Yeah.
they.
Yes.
So, do you know anything about cougars?
I do. That's funny. We just did a live chat with Doctor. I keep calling her Doctor. Her name's Beth Pratt. She might as well be a doctor of cougars, but she is a wildlife advocate and conservationist and the California director of the National Wildlife Federation. But we had a long chat about cougars and cougar conservancy because I live not too far from where P22, our resident mountain lion in Griffith Park, lived for total of 12 years, I believe. Yeah, they discovered him in, I think, the last 10 years of his life. But he miraculously crossed two freeways, the 101 and the 405. So that one freeway that I got hit
Wow.
on the shoulder of, he crossed it. Like, he is so badass. And he made this trek to Griffith Park, which is surrounded, so like it's surrounded by freeways, like a spider web of freeways. It's surrounded by like celebrity homes. It's,
Wow.
like it's kind of fancy town, like where, and I'm kind of on the, I'm near Warner Brothers. So I'm like on the kind of a little bit on the edge of it, off a bit. But it was great because, he survived for a really long time off of the deer, and he'd eat raccoons. He would eat, rabbits and things of that sort. He did eat a koala bear at the LA
Oh
Zoo,
my
which is
gosh.
kind of, yeah. Does that qualify as a snack? It's terrible. It's terrible. But his name was was it Killarney? Yeah, he was. And the LA Zoo, the crazy thing is the LA Zoo didn't get mad. They didn't like order him to get killed. They were like, sorry, our bad. We should have had higher fence,
Yeah.
and that was how they handled it. But he was this beautiful mountain lion, and they usually have typically very large home ranges. The sad thing is he probably died a virgin, because there was no
Yeah.
access to ladies, So Beth Pratt, who is pretty much the only reason, if any, I mean, there's a few other people that were huge advocates, but she was like the loudest, most vocal advocate. And she's just so lovely and hilarious and just a warm human that I think her enthusiasm is so contagious. It got so many people into P22, but when he got very sick, he got hit by a car in the end. He was old. 12 is very old for a mountain lion because usually they die, by 10 in the wild because you fight with other big cats, right? You're having these territorial little punch ups. He didn't have that. The worst he had was with a car. And but she got to say goodbye to him. They let her come in and say her final goodbyes, which is one of the most heart-wrenching things. But I'm just so glad because somebody who gave so much of her time and life to his protection. And also there's a wildlife crossing being built over the 101 freeway here.
That's great.
Yeah, it's the biggest wildlife crossing in the world. So it's going to
Wow.
be giant. Yeah. So check that out.
I love those things. Several other countries that do that regularly, and it seems like the United States should be leading in that, but of course we don't.
I know.
So
yeah.
we have a little less than 10 minutes left, and I think this is a great final question.
Okay.
So can you tell us about your future trip to Madagascar to see lemurs, and how would we go if we had the money?
Good question. So yeah, I am leading a trip to Madagascar. It is 9 days, 4 different cities. We're going to multiple national parks. One's called Ranamafana National Park. There's 12 species of lemur there, including the a nocturnal lemur species. So we're going to be doing a night hike. There's the rufous mouse lemur, also nocturnal. They're very promiscuous. Eyes also have very long copulations, 1 to 2 hours. So if there's a sock on the tree, we might have to keep moving. Just kidding. We're also going to see there's black and white rough lemurs, the Milne Edward Shafak. There's red-fronted lemurs at this park. And then there's also Anja Community Reserve, where they have a veritable buttload of ring-tailed lemurs. So if you watched Madagascar, you might remember King Julian. Fun side note, ring-tailed lemurs, as are many lemur species, are matriarchal. The ladies run the show. So it should have been Queen Julia, honestly. But we would see them. We'd get to check them out. They have these funny little stink fights. They love to sunbathe in like a really cool yoga pose. They're hilarious. And then there's also going to be another sanctuary we're going to go to in the capital of Tana, where there's multiple lemur species, some very rare ones, and they're a bit more habituated, meaning used to humans. So they might even get pretty close to you. Normally we'd say keep a distance because you don't want to, get hurt or get, zoonotic disease transmission. But, they might get a little closer than the average lemur. But it's going to be a lot of fun. And you can go to my my bio, or I'm so used to saying, go to my link in bio. You can probably check out my link tree, or if you follow me on Instagram or YouTube, there is a link that will take you to the page. But I have also coupons if you're interested. So I have $50, $100, and $250 coupons. And the price right now for early bird is $26.75, and it's May 29th through June 6th. So it's a pretty darn good price for 9 days in Madagascar. And I'll be running or muck telling you everything you want to know about lemurs. You're going to be lemured out, but it'll be a lot of fun. And the people that are signed up already are hilarious and wonderful. We already have a bee expert, who's California native bee expert. She's fantastic. We have a couple Germans who are good friends of mine from my Burning Man camp. And so you should come. And if you have any questions, just, find me and message me or comment.
Awesome. That's not the first one that you have sponsored. Didn't you do another trip? I don't know if you've done more than that, but it seems like I heard that it was sold out like really quickly, the last one.
Yeah, so I'm doing one actually in a couple weeks. I'm going to the Galapagos on February 26th. So I'm like, I'm freaking out because it's like I can't, and by the way, February 12th, which is just around the corner, not only is it National Poop Day, February 12th. I hope you all celebrate by throwing a parade. It's also Darwin Day. So it's Darwin's birthday. He is dead, so we will not be partying. But I can't believe I'm going to go to the Galapagos to see where Darwin came, kind of solidified the theory of evolution by natural selection. So that sold out in 10 days. And then, we've even had a bunch, like 4 people to drop out because of work. They immediately filled back up. So,
Wow.
it's going to be a really fun trip. And so definitely tune in. If you're on Instagram, I and YouTube, I will be posting a bunch of footage of, the marine iguanas, the blue-footed boobies, the Galapagos tortoises, flamingos, you name it. We'll behold it.
Oh, that's so cool. Oh, y'all are gonna have so much fun. I'm a little jealous. I have 5 kids, and
What?
my youngest are graduating high school.
What?
And so they're going to be, gonna have 3 in college very soon. So I can't afford to do anything other than scrape by and eat.
You look like you're 25. How do you have 5 children that are like college age?
Oh, let me tell you. Thank you so much. You said earlier you were born
Seriously.
in 79.
Mhm.
I'm quite a bit older than you.
I would never in a million years think that.
I was
Ever.
like, I can't believe you're saying it shows my age, and I'm like, oh my God. Like I'm so old.
No.
I can't do that.
I mean, I like getting older because I think it's more. I'd like to think I know more, but
Oh
but
yeah, I do. I like being older. I'm
Yeah.
okay with it. I have more experience, and older
Yeah.
women make good lovers anyway, right? So there you go.
Yes, absolutely. That's the way that works.
So
Experience.
and one thing I have to ask you: when you go on your trip, are you taking your banana suit with you?
Oh my God, of course. I'm about to order a new banana suit because
I
the
love
last
that.
one, when I did the SAG strike, because I was a Screen Actors Guild member for 27 years now, I wore a banana suit on the picket line for like 40
Oh,
days in a row. And I had
wow,
people
that's
sign it.
fantastic.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
great. Y'all have got to
Oh,
check out her videos because I had so much fun prepping for this. It was just an amazing, wonderful time. It really was. Thank you, Artemis Brain Sample.
Thank you.
$10
Yes, good.
super chant. Very good. Very good. Thank you so much. You're awesome. We really appreciate you.
Thank you, Sonny. You're great.
Oh, well, thank you. If you guys like this type of show, because I love doing this show, and if you like that, consider helping us out. You can do something simple by just liking, subscribing, all those good things, hit the bell. But if you would like to help us on a deeper way, because we are trying to become a 501c3, consider being a patron. So I want to thank our current patrons: Eric Ozols, Rion, Deneen Murphy, Dandy, Michael Wiseman, Kathy Cotton, Cindy Plaza, me, Aaron Coalson, Phil Calderone, Amanda McLeod, and Logan Fisher. I would like us to have so many patrons that I can't do that anymore. That we just let it scroll on the bottom and I don't say anything, because otherwise I'd be here for like, half an hour. So come on, guys, let's get some more patrons going. We really are very close to becoming a 501c3. We're like that close. So help us out. It takes money to do that. In the meantime, don't forget to check out our other shows on Skeptic Haven. We have Thursdays, of course, with the Sunny Spot. We have Saturdays with the Global Atheist, and that's an awesome show because you get to see atheists from all over the world. It's awesome. And then, of course, our Women Atheist Unload. Remember, this Saturday, 3:30 Central, War on Women with Alma and Mary Byler. You don't want to miss it. And then on Sunday, our call-in show, Let's Talk, which we love that show. So there's something for everybody. In the meantime, everyone, until we see you again, always remember to think critically. Good night, everybody.
The colors and the flower evolved in order to attract insects to pollinate it is interesting. It means that insects can see the color. It adds a question. Does this aesthetic sense also exist in the lower forms? Why is it aesthetic? All kinds of interesting questions which the science knowledge only adds to the excitement, the mystery, and the awe of a flower. It only adds. I don't understand how it subtracts.
The equation E is equal mc squared